Ready?
Yep.
All right, good afternoon. Today is March 26, 2025. This is the regular meeting of the City of Erie Environmental Advisory Council. Do we have any changes to the agenda? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is roll call. Campbell.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
Kerr's absent. Lupo.
Here.
Mason's absent. Puz here. Tupfer.
Here. So the people who aren't here, were we notified, or are they?
Yes, Sam was unable to make it today. And then,
Aaron's on his day.
correct. Associate members, Tarvin.
Here.
All right. Walmsley, absent. Wedekin, absent. Others, Director Spry.
Here.
Moore. Oh, present. And Peelman is absent. All right. Next item on the agenda, the approval of the February 2025 meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to accept as presented? Or maybe I should ask, do we have any corrections before we approve the minutes?
Motion to accept the
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Next item on the agenda, public comment. Do we have any comments from the public today? Seeing none, we will move on to item 4, old business. First item under old business is the LCAP priorities, followed by LCAP funding.
Yes, I can give you a report on that. Internally, we've been working with, specifically Sarah Peelman has been working with Public Works and the administration to possibly use some money to fund this LCAP. We haven't got full approval of it yet, but we are in the works.
Okay.
So this is the whole conversation about LCAP right now, or is there more on the agenda later?
No.
Freddie, you have to talk a little louder.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot, yes. So is this, okay, so in terms of next steps, are we going to talk about that after the student presentations, or could I ask a question now?
Well, the student presentation is very specific to what the students are doing. So, I mean, if you have questions about
Just the
LCAP, we
whole-
can
do we have-
discuss that now.
How's your crystal ball now, a month later, about just the whole funding universe?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but if I did have a crystal ball, the hope is that we will be able to use some funding that was originally for a different pot of money, but it's very much in line with environmental issues.
I meant the hereafter, say we get a plan written and,
You mean implementation funding? Well, we haven't crossed that path yet,
Right.
Freda. We first need to find funding to develop this LCAP.
right,
We do have in the report that the Michael Baker did for the P4P project. If you look in the back of that report, you will find several implementation grants that we could use once our LCAP is developed.
And they still
And I
exist.
imagine that once we have an LCAP developed, we will then have some recommendation as to where we can find funding. Plus, we've already received support from Penn State to help us, guide us through with some technical assistance on some, not necessarily on implementation, but other things. And so we have good references and resources around us. But we first need to get this LCAP completed.
Right. The other question, it's not a question, it was more an observation. I was at the DEP presentation the other day, and our greenhouse gas inventory shows transportation as the largest source, whereas I believe, and their pie, it was much smaller in comparison. So it's an observation I wanted to share.
Okay. When we get to the presentation and when their students are complete, I'm sure there'll be some time for questions. Okay.
Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item B under old business, the secondary priority, single-use plastics and litter mitigation, specifically the plastic bag ban ordinance advisory committee updates. Now, I was unable to attend the subcommittee meeting on this, but I believe Molly was there, so if I speak out of turn, please correct me. Dr. Mason sent an email today basically giving us a brief description of what happened. So the next meeting of the subcommittee will be April 9th, which I should be able to attend that one. Currently working on a uniform data form questionnaire for seeking community input. Also working to create a one-pager with data and information supporting the intent of the proposed ordinance. Also creating a list of community partners, and the plan would be to finish outreach materials, so then the subcommittee members be assigned groups to talk to and begin disseminating the outreach material.
Got it?
Okay, sounds good. We have any questions or comments? In this case, I'll have to defer to Molly
Just a comment.
partially. Yes.
In terms of the Ripples of Plastic movie, I don't know whether you folks saw it or not, but it was excellent. And I think anything that we can do to promote the use of that movie in for other audiences, it really raises people awareness. I mean, I drag some people there that don't usually go to that sort of thing, and they were amazed because they just don't think about the impact that plastic is having on the environment. And I think maybe our minutes can show that we commend Sam on the and the others that worked with her on the development of that film. It was excellent, I thought.
Is that publicly available, or is that a link we have to get from Sam herself?
I was wondering, because we thought we would like to do it out at the monastery
Yeah.
and just invite people from that area. So I was hoping to ask Sam that today, but we'll have to see.
I'd be interested
But I would
to.
presume that eventually it should be available.
No, it was definitely a well thought out, very thought provoking movie, and I'm into horror movies, but that might have been one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
So, as you know, I'm interested, I mean, the movie did point out, or maybe it was in the questions that Sam mentioned, you know, food packaging is in her mind, the number one stream. Something, I mean, if you're looking at non-industrial sources, let's put it that way. And you know, food packaging is one of my interests, and I shared with some of you some pictures of food packaging that has a viewer, but it's not all plastic, it's not clamshells. And again, I would love to see us help move towards a way to provide some kind of umbrella purchasing so that the food service, the food purveyors, the food sellers can buy a suitable food packaging at a more economical price. I go to the food co-op, and we're supposed to be environmentally responsible, and I see these huge clamshells with almost no food in it, and I'm, kind of horrified. There's really no reason for it. We could have a cardboard package with a plastic window on it. So I hope the committee thinks about that.
Yeah, it's our hope that, when we approach the businesses, we get their opinion on what do they actually use, but we could also give them suggestions for replacements. And the thought came to mind, like Meals on Wheels was a big one. Like, could we do reusable packaging where it's almost like a green box system? But it's all something we have to discuss very thoroughly, because I'm sure we don't know the caveats, I suppose, of implementation.
Yeah, I'd say restaurants and grocery stores are way, I used to deliver for Meals on Wheels, so
Oh, yeah? Okay.
we're not a big source of waste compared to,
That's good to know. Yeah. Nice.
Any other comments? All right. Thank you for everyone's comments. Moving on to new business, the LCAP PSU student presentation on greenhouse gases inventory.
If I may introduce the people online, I think I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourselves. But over the last, what has it been? I think since September, has it been that just about
September.
Yeah. And you've met the students before at another presentation. So they are wrapping up our greenhouse gas inventory. This particular presentation just focuses on the inventory itself, and they've done a great job not only communicating with the different groups to obtain information, but also working as a team to develop the inventory. Peter Buck is the professor who leads the LCAP students. And Peter, I don't know if you'd like to start to just introduce yourself. And I'm not sure if you were with us, Peter, at the last presentation, but that'd be a nice opportunity just to introduce yourself to the group. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Jackie. I just want to say it's really been a pleasure and an honor to be working with your staff. Sarah and Jackie have been so generous with their time. They are such thoughtful stewards of taxpayer dollars in Erie, and really working so diligently with our students to make sure that we're able to move the climate needle in the right direction for the city of Erie, so that you can live up to commitments that the city has aspirations for, as well as the things that you're eager to get to work on. As the co-director of the local climate action program, it is just a total honor to be able to work with really incredible partners across the Commonwealth, and with really great students like Tyler and James, who have dedicated so much time to what they are going to deliver to you today. And I'm going to take a moment here and brag on their behalf, because they are very humble people. The amount of work that they have done to try to get you a really accurate industrial, commercial, and residential electricity emissions number kind of can't be overstated, as well as some things in transportation and in solid waste. Erie's data landscape for determining greenhouse gas emissions is complicated, required a lot of troubleshooting in the background, some of which James and Tyler did, some of which Jackie and Sarah really helped with. And it took a lot of effort, and we've done the best that we can. You should know, when they'll say where there's some uncertainty in the inventory, they're diligent, honest people. But I just really hope that you appreciate the work that they've done, because really, at the end of the day, they are here to help you. That is really what they are here to do, and we're just grateful for the opportunity. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to them and step out of the way.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Thank you, Peter. slideshow. Can you all see it all right? Okay, cool. I'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us again today. To familiarize ourselves in case anyone who wasn't here during our fall presentation, I'm Tyler Bogle, and I'm joined by my partner, James Schaefer, as well as our instructor, Peter Buck, for our finalized greenhouse gas inventory. I'm an energy and sustainability policy major at Penn State University, more specific World Campus, and me and James will be graduating this spring. And I'm also from and currently reside in Erie. And during high school, I'm an Iroquois graduate, and during high school I went to Erie County Technical School and received my certificate in electrical engineering, having given me more of an electrical background, which is where I developed an interest in energy and sustainability. And recently I also earned my Earth Sustainability Certificate.
Hi, as Tyler said, my name is James Schaefer. I'm also a Penn State student. I go to University Park. I'm actually a state college native, been in this town for my entire life. So unfortunately I'm not able to really spend a lot of time in Erie specifically, but so I am a geography major, so it's a very broad major, and luckily I was able to explore some human and human environment interactions, kind of focusing on human environment geography, which really got me interested in sustainability, and kind of pushed me towards the Environment Society certificate, and also some GIS, like Geographic Information Sciences, and Justice, Equity, and Diversity in Space, kind of what I focused on.
James, if you could speak a little slower, it'd be helpful because the sound is not wonderful.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Be sure to do that.
I'm talking more about our local climate action program. The local climate action program of Penn State University was initiated in 2019 by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection with support from the U.S. Department of Energy, and aims to partner municipal governments with university students, just like us today. And the program focuses on inventorying a municipality's greenhouse gas emissions and develop a climate action plan to set goals in reducing those emissions from target sectors and address local climate impacts. Introducing the leaders of the LCAP program, it's led by Brandy Robinson and Peter Buck in collaboration with Christopher Nave from the DEP's Energy Office, and they partnered with ICLEI to use their ClearPath software for creating a greenhouse gas inventory. Jaden Basilovic on the far right is one of ICLEI's program officers who's been assisting us with the program in developing our inventory to be as accurate as possible. A quick refresher about what ICLEI is that ICLEI stands for the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. It was formed in 1990, it became the first and largest global network of local governments who are devoted to solving sustainability challenges. Their standards, tools, and programs help municipalities reduce greenhouse gas emissions while improving lives and livelihoods and protecting natural resources and communities around the world.
So moving on to the inventory, before I even get into the inventory, I'm going to just reiterate what global warming potentials are, because those are very important to understanding how we calculated emissions for the inventory. So basically, warming potential means that not every single greenhouse gas has the same ability to trap heat in the atmosphere. So for example, methane, you can see methane has a greenhouse gas potential of 28, whereas carbon dioxide has a greenhouse gas potential of 1. So basically that means that methane, 1 metric ton of methane in the atmosphere traps the same amount of heat as 28 metric tons of carbon dioxide over the 100-year time period that they use to calculate these, or that they use to generate these global warming potentials. So that means that for the inventory, we record everything as carbon dioxide equivalents, so metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. It's because we're calculating for multiple different gases, and we want to be able to have a standardized unit for that. So moving on to the 2023 inventory results, so these are estimates. We'll be reiterating that as much as possible. So we estimated about roughly 781 metric tons of CO2 equivalents for the community of Erie. So the four largest sectors you can see are transportation and mobile sources, so that's the biggest one. Then there's industrial energy, residential energy, and commercial energy. Those make up the vast majority of the emissions pie there. And then the last three, water and wastewater, solid waste, and process and fugitive emissions, take up only 7% of the total emissions for the community. So how does this compare to the 2021 inventory? So as you guys know, in previous years, the Erie partnered with LCAP, and they produced a 2019 and a 2021 inventory. So the 2021 inventory, you can see on the left, that has 815 roughly metric tons of CO2 equivalent, while the city of Erie's 2023 one has 781 roughly metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So you can see a little bit of a decrease. So another thing to mention is we updated the 2021 and the 2019 inventories with the data that we were using. We were able to re-receive data from 2019 and 2021 that more aligns with the methods that we used for the 2023 inventory to keep them as comparable as possible. And we'll get into what that means a little bit later, but the previous inventories, the students working on the previous inventories didn't have the context of like the geography, the geographic extent that the utilities were calculating or recording and delivering the energy usages that we use to calculate. They didn't have the context that we did, so they took some numbers at face value without that kind of knowledge, and we were able to kind of correct that to make it more comparable.
Our transportation sector, a good part of it is essentially estimations across the board, except for transit emissions. Since the good majority of the sector was collected using Google EIE, which uses satellite imagery data to help collect all on the on-road vehicles, including cars, trucks, and motorcycles. And for where Dr. Sam Mason came in and helped us save some time, she helped us collect transit emissions, in which it just goes to show that the automobile, gasoline, and diesel parts of that are in boundary within Erie's jurisdiction take up a large amount of the emissions within this sector. And comparing that to the data we received from the Erie Metropolitan Transit Authority just goes to show how very little that public transportation is, and how it could help with decreasing those single rider vehicle usage. And for the non-road vehicle emissions, we use, and this is including like water vessels, construction vehicles, and rail systems. We obtained from the 2020 EPA NEI data retrieval tool and adjusted to represent only the city of Erie's population, downscaling from the county data that we were given to the population of the city of Erie. And essentially what can help bring these emissions down goes down to like using low carbon emission vehicles and utilizing active mobility, like taking your bike to work if you live within a short distance of work, and walking. And what's becoming more popular are like rentable electric mobile devices, like electric scooters or e-bikes that could be stationed around town. And lastly, the most known option is using electric and/or hybrid vehicles that can directly help bring down transportation and carbon emissions.
So moving on to industrial energy, which is the second biggest piece of the emissions pie that we have. You can see that industrial natural gas is pretty significant. Same with industrial electricity. So these next three slides, the methodology for industrial, commercial, and residential energy, we use the same downscaling methods as the utilities provided us the natural gas usage, or the distribution, and the kilowatt hours. They provided those together, broken them up by sectors. So we had to take those numbers and downscale them appropriately to Erie, because unfortunately we weren't able to receive data that was already attributed, or what's the word I'm thinking of? Attributed, essentially, aggregated to the boundaries of the city of Erie. So for National Fuel, their data was for all of the National Fuel PA territory. So we had to find the population of all of that territory and then downscale that by the population of Erie to kind of get a proportion to downscale it. And that method, to be completely honest, works probably really well with residential, because that's a little bit more correlated to population. But industrial and commercial are not as so correlated to population, but this was the best method that we could get to downscale that. But just to reiterate that, though these are estimates and shouldn't really be considered as accurate activity data, but there is the best that we could do with the data we were given, and got reviewed through the ICLEI programs officer as well. And with the Penelec electricity data, that was given for a series of zip codes that extended beyond. So luckily we were able to receive parcel data from the county, and to avoid getting too technical, basically just downscale by area of the parcels for each sector. So the area of industrial parcels, area of residential parcels, and area of commercial parcels, to get the best possible kind of downscaling ratio to apply to those kilowatt hours that we received. But yeah, you can see that industrial is still a very large sector, and that just goes to show that Erie is still a very industrial city. Also goes to show that one of the best ways the city can reduce emissions is to really focus on building energy efficiencies, and through things like sustainable building codes, incentives, and various things like that. And that applies to residential and commercial also. So residential is a similar story. Same downscaling methods, but the proportion of the population downscale seems to be much better equipped for something like the residential sector. So these are still not perfect numbers, but we're pretty confident in these. So you can see that residential is the third largest. It's a pretty significant amount. It's a very significant sector for emissions. Building emissions in general is very significant. So that's where like things like those green building standards can really come into play to reduce that. And then one thing to mention is we calculated non-utility fuels for residential and for commercial. So the most significant ones are distillate fuel oil, and natural gas liquids or HDL liquids. So those non-utility fuels do have, we recorded them in the inventory, but didn't calculate them towards the actual totals because they were not included in the previous inventories, just to make it as comparable as possible. But they are still they're still as information only. So anybody who has access to the inventory through ICLEI can review those totals, and we can even put them in later, and we'd probably want to go back and add those to the previous inventories. But so that just means that there is roughly about maybe 8,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent that we could add to residential energy for those non-utility fuels like distillate fuel oil and HDL. And then for commercial, that's the same story as the other three. The distillate fuel oil and HDL, there's a significant amount for commercial energy that we found in our calculations. But so that would add about maybe 18,000 metric tons. These are just generalizations. I'm just estimating or rounding up or rounding down. The actual numbers are in the inventory to view. And can be turned on to be calculated in if we decide to, or if the city wants that. But yeah, so commercial energy is also a very significant piece of the pie, and stationary buildings, like the same approaches to the other two sectors, can be kind of taken to reduce those emissions.
Our solid waste data kind of at the start of the year, like Jackie mentioned before, kind of turned into us chasing our tails, to put it. We kept on going circles and circles and trying to figure out the best way possible. Lots of emails back and forth with Waste Management on clarifying data, until we finally found like an unconventional method per se to calculate the landfill contributions. We started with the information provided by the Bureau of Refuse and Waste Management. We focused on the refuse's active accounts to determine the total tons of municipal solid waste. We had to focus on residential waste as it was too complex to acquire waste tonnage from commercial and industrial sites, as they utilize private haulers. Speaking of which, we subtracted the total number of households in the city of Erie with Refuse's active accounts to identify those not served by the Bureau of Refuse. And then we estimated that the households and apartments left relied on private haulers. We then multiplied the estimated tons per household for those using private haulers and added that figure to the total tons reported by the Bureau of Refuse. And for the compost data we received directly by the refuse, we recorded both the inflow of compost that the refuse received and the outflow that was landfilled. What can help with these emissions, going back to saying single-use plastics can help reduce these, as it takes a lot of energy to also for the recycling of the single-use plastics or the decomposition of them. And another important way of doing it is educating people on the practice of mindful consumption and recycling, because making conscious decisions on what we buy, use, and discard can help create less amounts of trash thrown away.
So moving on to the...
Oops, sorry.
No problem. So moving on to the last sector that we have here is the water and wastewater sector. It's a very small sliver overall, but you can see that the emissions related to the water and wastewater treatment, or wastewater treatment plant, my apologies, is the big kind of overshadows entirely the emissions related to potable water. So the wastewater treatment plant, these are actually directly recorded energy, like electricity use and natural gas usage from the Bureau of Sewers. So these numbers are probably the most accurate that we have. And you can see that the plant is very energy intensive. It uses a lot of energy. That energy we actually subtracted from the commercial sector because with the ICLEI protocol, the water and wastewater sector is included in the commercial, but we subtracted that so it could show up as its own sliver, just to put it into perspective. And another significant emitter related to water, the treatment of wastewater is the combustion of sludge and biosolids. That's the second largest entry of emissions in this sector. And there's a little bit of emissions also related to the nitrification process and the discharge of like the effluent, the nitrogen and the effluent that's discharged into a large body of water like Lake Erie. And then for Erie Waterworks, which is the potable water utility provider, we calculated their energy use from their energy invoices that we received. So we calculated the total, and then we separated out the ones that take place outside of Erie and just only focus on ones in boundary. And then we just calculated the electricity and natural gas usage for those, and those are the addresses that are related to extraction, treatment, and supply of portable water. And a lot of that is happening in buildings that can also be addressed through the emissions of the energy efficiency can be addressed through stationary building efficiency. That's one way that could be brought down. But for the wastewater treatment plant, energy efficiency for the plant itself, so it doesn't use as much electricity, but also potentially something that could alleviate the combustion of sludge and biosolids is a digester, which would use basically bacteria to break down solids and creates then biogas, which can actually be used as a fuel. So that's just kind of one approach the city could take to reduce the emissions from that sector.
To help compare to other communities, ICLEI provides the availability of providing comparisons between other municipalities and past inventories. So we've been searching for similar areas in terms of economy, industry, and population that are similar to Erie. The municipalities that have strong and accurate emission inventories are Bucks County and Lower Macungie. Compared to Bucks County and Lower Macungie, the city of Erie is more in the middle ground of the total amount of metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, leading to our top three sectors being very similar as our number one highest emission sector is transportation. And what comes next is that the city of Erie needs a climate action plan. Having a cap will help provide a structure and framework along with the inclusion of other commitments previously made to help get back on track of lowering emissions for the city to help mitigate and adapt to future climate change.
And climate action plans can promote equity, economic growth, and also improve the quality of the physical environment for the city through mitigation and adaptation actions. So that just emphasized the fact that climate action is not necessarily just a costly expenditure. It actually it addresses equity. It can address equity. It can reduce costs for families. It can improve the health and just build resilience for the community. So some of the things we have been working on this semester to kind of help the city towards the climate action plan is we developed a prioritization matrix, which we just modeled off of other communities that had prioritization matrices, which is basically just a way to score actions based on various criteria like mitigation potential, feasibility, cost, community co-benefits. And it's a framework that the city can use to kind of, they can change the criteria around and figure out how to go about scoring actions and kind of ranking them against, pitting them against other actions. And we also provided some example CAP actions for that to put through the scoring. And then we will also be working on, right now we're working really on the researching the framework of CAPs and providing some CAP guidance, which will also have some actions in there and some recommendations for kind of taking a structural approach to kind of building momentum around climate action and sustainability in the city. And we'll also be assisting with request for proposal language because the city is trying to get a consultant to actually write the plan.
Any questions?
Very impressive.
Well done.
Now, I do not have any questions. Does anyone from our board?
I have specific questions about calculations. If I might just ask about how you got the transportation data. You said that was a Google Maps or Google Earth?
Google EIE,
Yeah.
which is it's just the satellite imagery. It's just essentially counts all the kinds of vehicles. Peter might be able to explain it a little bit better than I can. But the way that is calculated, we used ICLEI's software to help take the GPC distance and converting that into vehicle miles traveled to then per vehicle fuel type to calculate the amount of emissions per the kind of vehicle types that there are.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I have a question on all three of the pieces of the pie that were energy. It looked like the national fuel part of it, which I assume was use of gas for heating, was much more than the emissions due to electricity use. Would that lead us to consider the possibility that if there would be transitions from using fossil fuels for heating to electricity, and if we had electricity generated from renewables, that our community could see a significant drop in our emissions?
Well, I think, I mean, Peter might be able to provide a better answer, but I would assume that electricity can be, electricity generation is a little bit cleaner based on like the calculations we got than the uses of natural gas, and maybe it's just also the sheer amount of natural gas. But I mean, ideally, it would be through more renewable sources of electricity, like solar. But I don't know, Peter, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great question, and it's reducing emissions in your scope, the scope one of the combustion in your industry or commercial buildings for heating, which is primarily what this is for, you're correct, and switching to electrification, depending on the efficiency of that system, that has an impact. So it depends on the technology adopted in HVAC. And then it also depends on the carbon intensity of the grid as well. So the maximizing efficiency is always like every energy services company is going to say you should maximize your efficiency first, because the best kind of energy is the energy you don't use. And then on-site generation or procurement of renewable electricity those are sort of the next set of things to do. And the more that we can do to decarbonize the grid, which has so much more to do with forces that are bigger than the city itself, that also helps. And that's, politics and, the Public Utility Commission and PJM and the state legislature and all that. So I guess then to say it as succinctly as I can after having talked too long already is that switching to electrification and decarbonizing the grid are two of the most important things that we can do.
I live in the city, and I replaced my natural gas furnace with a high-efficiency natural gas furnace in 2018, so I made that investment. I also have my dryer, my water heater, and my stove are natural gas. So, at my age, the idea of changing all that out is not really very attractive, but also I'm just kind of curious if we look at encouraging people to make switches, and there's all these appliances that we have and all this equipment that we've invested in, and there's obtaining new stuff. The places that manufacture all this stuff isn't Erie, but there's a trade-off, isn't there?
If I might just interject for a moment, because this leads into a little bit of what I was hoping that we could talk about. Oftentimes we'll move into some of these discussions in our weekly meetings of like what's next, how are we going to do implementation, and I wanted to let you know online that our mayor is actually sitting in the audience here, and we have talked about the fact that the city owns 100 facilities, 100 buildings. And I wanted one of the team members online to possibly address the facility inventory that you talked about, because one of the things, in terms of what's next, the crystal ball is like, we have the ability to make a change at the city, on the 100 buildings that we already own. So if Peter could maybe speak to it, or one of the students, and so that Mayor Schember can hear directly from you all some of the thoughts we had around that in terms of how we can make an impact first and foremost at our level.
Yeah, so Jackie, I'm so grateful that you just brought this up, and Mayor Schember, thank you so much for being there. I know that mayors can be really incredibly powerful in moving public opinion, in gathering people together to point in a common direction, and we know that there are mayors across the United States who are part of a cohort of mayors who are really making a difference, and I just really appreciate you being a person who sees the value in doing this. So thank you for that. Last Friday, during our weekly meeting, I had said to Jackie and with the students as we were talking about what could happen next is that the local, the LCAP next year, we could do a local government operational inventory for all of your facilities. And I did speak to my co-director about that, as well as Kelly Volkemer, who is working with us and has been so helpful for Tyler and James with data and whatnot. And we would be very eager to be able to do that for you. One of the things that we see in research literature is that one of the most powerful ways to get communities to do climate action is that their neighbor does it. And when communities do a local government operation inventory and follow it with an investment, it jumps community. So it will position you also as a leader. And so the LCAP would be very eager to be able to have you as part of our cohort next year to follow on from Tyler and James's work. I think that would be great. And just to reiterate, working with Sarah and Jackie and the EAC has been wonderful. So, I think it's if you'll have us back, we would like to come back. It won't be James and Tyler, unfortunately, who are wonderful, but someone will get to inherit their good work.
Yeah, I would just like to add too, I think that's a great idea, and I think the city partnering with the 2030 partners who are already looking at their energy and ways to reduce that and looking how they can green things and energy efficiency. I think we must have, I don't know, Molly, 20 or 30 at least different institutions, from universities to Erie Insurance to the some of the religious communities that are already participating in that type of thing. And I think the two cohorts, I think that would be a great way to really kick things off and to show people that things can be done and to begin making a difference immediately.
Mm-hmm. It's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before we move on?
I just wanted to
Your
make
comments?
one last comment. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a question from, go ahead. No, you go ahead. If you could just come up to the podium. We have a question from our public. Sure, yes, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Miles Roberts. I'm the Mayor Court Vista for Bike Erie. And I had a couple questions, mainly to deal with the margin of error with this study's total versus the 2021 study's total, because it was within 5%. So what kind of margin of error were you guys working with?
I don't really know exactly how to answer the margin of error. A lot of these, like the ways we went about, I guess, downscaling and trying to aggregate the data for Erie was kind of just the best options we could come up with. And I don't know, we didn't really have a way to apply a margin of error. Like, for example, the non-utility fuels that use ACS, like American Community Survey estimates from the census, those will have a margin of error, and those margin of errors are really significant. So like for non-utility fuels, which we opted to not include in this total, but are in the inventory as viewable totals, had a margin of error, I feel like almost of like 40% of the households that they said would actually use those fuels. But I think just understanding that they are estimates is kind of the best. The estimate, I don't really know exactly how to establish a margin of error for the approach that we went to, because it's about geography and the way things are dispersed, and there's no really perfect way to go about that other than having the utilities kind of be calculating or I guess breaking down their data based on the community itself that they send gas or electricity to. I don't really know exactly how to go about that exactly, but I mean the margin of error, if it's like statistical census data, you can kind of see it there. But
gotcha. And then
and really quickly, if I can, because each of the sectors of the inventory has different pieces of data, some of which are survey, like the American Community Survey, and where there is a margin of error, but others are geographically oriented or derived and come from the utility and the utility's own reporting on that. So then it's a question of how it's been downscaled. So I like to just say accept each one with a bit of fudge in either direction. The most important things to see are probably the proportions involved Because if you want to take action to mitigate the maximum number of greenhouse gas emissions, then seeing a sector that has a lot, like in this case, transportation, that's somewhere where the city might be able to make a small action that actually can have make a big dent.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And then my second question was, since you guys had a bunch of Penelec data, was that Penelec energy, was that energy created with coal or through another means?
That we aren't typically so sure of, but assuming it's probably through coal, I would assume through our local power distribution system.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably look into our local power plants around the area and what specifically serves which community. And then they'll probably have it listed on their site.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So I'll provide a little more detail on that too, because Tyler is right and his explanation was a little incomplete. So the grid operator has Pennsylvania divided into different segments, and those different segments have different emissions factors associated with them. And so there is a different mix of coal, well, actually it would be in this order: natural gas, probably nuclear, coal, wind, hydro, solar, biomass. And so the different, so it's Pennsylvania West is that section of the grid. And so there's an emissions factor that gets associated with it. And anyone who's interested, we can follow up and share the map with you, and you can dig into that a lot. But Pennsylvania's overall greenhouse gas emissions have reduced very significantly, in large part, whatever we think about fossil fuels, in large part because of the substitution of natural gas for coal and the retirement of most of the coal-fired power plants in Pennsylvania. And with 3 Mile Island coming back on, at least one of the generators, that will actually further reduce the emissions factor load for some parts of Pennsylvania. And solar is the fastest growing energy source in the Northeast.
And also, just to quickly add on to that, with the emissions factors, we used the eGrid subregions, and the specific eGrid subregion we used was RFC East, because that's the one that covers most of Pennsylvania and Erie. And you can look, you can go and look online, the specific, I guess it's emissions, pounds of emissions per gigawatt hours, and you can kind of look at that to see the specific emissions factor we use to calculate that.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's all I had.
Thank you for your questions.
I just want to say something really quick. Joe Schember, Mayor of Erie. I've really enjoyed this today, and I'm very, very happy that you suggested that next year we'd take a look at our buildings and try to improve the efficiency of those buildings. I'm definitely very open to that. I'll support it in every way I can. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments? All right, well, I want to thank Tyler, James, and Peter for the very informative presentation and all your hard work. I think I speak for everyone on the Environmental Advisory Council on that, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I think, we're going to have one more presentation that's right to wrap this project up, and that will be at the end of the semester. So you'll see everybody back again for the final deliverable, and to go over more of the prioritization matrix, which I look forward to having you see, because that kind of sets the course of how we may take action. So, no, thank you so much, and great job. Thank you.
I just want to say, some of us old folks, and there's a few of us here, we've been, hearing and involved with climate change and environmental issues at least since the 60s, some of us. And I was just listening to the CBC on the way over here and how your generation is experiencing more climate anxiety than any other. And it's just really, it's reassuring to hear you. And our friend from Bike Erie. It's just really nice to know that you guys are going to be leading the charge in the years to come.
Thank you, Freda.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, up next, new business, item B, the dark sky ordinance update. So do we have an update?
Yeah, Cooper, sorry. Do you mind coming up to the table for a moment?
Is he doing the update?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. We have a few things that we wanted to talk about. You received in your supporting documents for this meeting an example ordinance. I don't know, Cooper, if you wanted to mention anything about that right now, but that ordinance is one example. There are others out there that certainly we can pull from, but it was a starting point that we found. It was suggested in some of the communication after that was set out that perhaps the EAC form another advisory board that is specific to only to the dark sky ordinances, dark sky / signage possibly ordinances.
Or outdoor lighting.
Well, that would be included in the signage ordinance. We've already started looking at different signage ordinance, different models specifically for Pennsylvania. So it might be a good idea for the EAC to form another advisory committee just for this charge.
No, yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I guess moving forward, are we thinking this is going to end up being like an amendment to a zoning ordinance, standalone amendment?
I can't quite hear what you're saying.
I was asking if this was going to be an amendment to the zoning ordinance or as a standalone ordinance.
You know more about this than
Yes, I
any of
know.
us.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just curious.
Right. So signage ordinances, let's start there, because I know more about that than the dark skies. But signage ordinance can be a standalone, or it can be incorporated into the zoning ordinance. Correct, Matt?
Well, I know the zoning ordinance contains signage provisions, so I would assume amending that.
Yes.
Where did the LED go?
We do currently have 4 pages of signage ordinance, we have a signage section in the zoning ordinance. Were part of?
No, but I think it's section 303.
Okay. So,
And did the LED ordinance that got passed, did it get incorporated into that?
Yes,
Okay.
it did. Yes,
Yeah.
it did. So we haven't gotten that far, but I
Okay.
think that could be part of, the advisory committee. It makes sense, at least at this point, that would be incorporated, a signage ordinance of some kind would be incorporated into the zoning ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the dark sky ordinance, I don't know if Cooper had anything to add on that.
Not too much right now, but we have found example ordinances both for zoning and SALDO for outdoor lighting. But I think that's what we shared.
Don't we not exactly have a saldo here?
There's a SALDO.
Okay.
Yes, it doesn't necessarily address land development. I read through it. But now that the city does have both a zoning and a subdivision and land development ordinance, just in case you didn't know what a SALDO was. Unfortunately, the way I would see it is that making an amendment to those documents would create nonconformities or only apply to new lights, and I don't know if it will actually address the main issue. Moving forward it would, but sometimes a standalone ordinance would be worth looking into, except then you have, and I think we're going to run into that with the plastic bag ban, I knew there was a second word in there, ordinance, when it comes to the actual enforcement of the ordinances. So,
Yeah, definitely two issues that would still need to be addressed. But
mm-hmm.
you're saying that if the signage ordinance was incorporated into the zoning ordinance, then you'd have nonconformity, and anything that's already established.
Legally established.
We cannot, we have no ability to change any of those.
A good example would be the LED ordinance doesn't cover the sign on the Cathedral Prep facility on 12th Street, which wouldn't comply if it was going out now.
I mean, you can make an argument, and honestly, this might be a legal question, but you can make an argument that once you start regulating and it's creating a safety issue, light into traffic, which is causing glare and blinding drivers, I think that would actually potentially, I want to say overrule, but potentially be an avenue for enforcement, because it is creating a health safety issue, which is basically the whole point of having zoning in place, is to stop.
Health, safety, and welfare of the
Yes,
public.
correct.
As an individual who has sensitivities to disturbing lighting, and it's the human environment, I mean, I'm all for dark sky ordinance, I'm real bird oriented, and I know Matt's astronomy oriented, but the human environment is part of what the EAC is about. So my ability, and I'm representative of lots of people in Erie, to be in public space without having disturbing visual environment should be part of what we're doing here.
Well, before we go any further, I think we had discussed the potential of a subcommittee on this issue. Does that seem like something we'd be interested in?
I'd make a motion that we form an advisory committee for considering a lighting management ordinance program.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of creating a subcommittee?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have our second subcommittee. Who would like to be on the subcommittee? As the chair, I'm also on it, so.
I'll join you.
Okay. We have John and Fredo.
Just to note that you can invite others from outside the EAC to join these advisory committees. So if there are people that I'm sure that Mike or Freda, that you would want as part of the subcommittee. I don't know if you have to take a vote for that, or how we might have to look back, but it does say in the bylaws that others can be part of
It says it
that.
in the bylaws, so I wouldn't think we would need a vote.
Yeah.
I think the
But it have to
subcommittee
be
could
city
decide.
residents?
I don't think it's specified, but you may ask people who have an interest in it, or maybe an
Well, I'm
expert.
thinking about the
in it.
Erie Birding Observatory.
Yeah.
Mary Birdsong's a city resident, but this is her busy season coming up.
I met with the new director of the Erie Bird Observatory on a Zoom call this morning, and
great.
I'm sure that they would want to be involved. So
Yes.
I'll ask to make sure, yeah.
Great.
And also to note, that we still have an open-ended contract with Michael Baker International, which is a consulting firm. We've already talked to them about both these ordinances, and they are willing, we would retain them, to provide us technical assistance. So this is not, we're not looking at months and months out. I mean, we're moving on. We really would like to move on these, and, hopefully gain support from the EAC to then gain support from others internally, externally, and then through the Planning Commission to hopefully, you know, be able to move this forward a little bit quicker because it's so needed, as we see, especially in our downtown.
Yeah, I mean,
So.
if this is going to involve actually amending the zoning ordinance, which, you know, honestly is a function of the Planning Commission, we should probably have someone from the Planning Commission.
That's a good
or
idea.
Maybe even if I, not necessarily present, but come to a meeting and just give them our general idea and that.
Well, maybe someone from the Planning Commission would like to be on the advisory committee.
That's what I'm
So,
thinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
that, I'm happy to send out an invite to see if they'd be interested, and I'm sure they would.
Mhm.
So, I can do that,
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it would be their recommendation.
yeah. But I think it's a good idea to
Yeah,
have
I
them
think it's a
involved.
good idea.
Yeah.
Can I ask, this is off the track a little bit, who's on the plastic ban, bag ban subcommittee?
I'm on there, Sam, and then you. and
Okay, I would like to
our
be on that
subcommittee.
committee.
Ah, Devon.
I missed
Yeah,
that meeting.
And Jenna as well.
Mhm.
Okay, so you can put me on the
Yeah,
list,
that's
Maggie?
great.
We can do that.
Okay.
Do we take a motion to, was it passed for the advisory committee?
Yeah,
Okay,
oh,
okay.
then we
thank
have
And
to
you
amend
said, I'm somehow I missed that, but it's in an email someplace? The ordinance that you sent for the, Dark
Yes.
sky?
Yes, I'll resend it to you.
Okay.
It was, I put everything in separate attachments this
Thank you
time.
so much.
No, that's okay. I actually just, I happened to do it that way, but I'll resend it to you.
okay,
Pat.
thanks.
But I know that Sarah Sargent from the Erie Bird Observatory suggested going to look at the American Bird Conservancy's Bird City Network program, and there's some good materials in there. Also, I want to invite everybody to the,
Wait, Freda, let's finish through our agenda because there
this
are.
is part of this discussion.
Well, there are a few announcements, and I think it's worth waiting because we have a few events going on, I know,
Sure.
coming up.
Go ahead.
Anything else in the dark sky ordinance?
This is absolutely
See-
related, but not.
Okay.
I
Is
just
this in
wanna-
regards to the
it-
email you sent out earlier?
There is an event on Saturday from 2 to 5 at the Trek. They're showing a movie. It's exactly on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Freda.
It's, do you know what the title of that is again?
Lights Out Erie.
Thank you.
Moving on, any other questions, comments? All right, up next, Arbor Day updates. Do we have Arbor Day updates?
Yeah. The Urban Forest Committee.
Cooper, you have to be louder. Some of us
Yeah,
are
sorry.
old and can't hear.
The Urban Forest Committee is planning a number of things around Arbor Day that I don't have with me right now, but I can send those along.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, moving on to item D, DCNR Watershed and Forestry Project.
So, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we've had a pretty substantial grant from DCNR over the last couple of years for more tree plantings, lawn conversions, riparian buffers, and what am I missing? Tree vitalized planting. So we received, the total project is $356,000. We have several partners that are included in this grant. Our West Bayfront, Groundwork, Mercyhurst, Benedictine Sisters, I know, help me out, Cooper. Northeast, there's a few others that I'm missing that have in-kind volunteer hours that they've allotted. So we are in the last year of this grant, and we're hoping that, well, we know we're going to be able to spend this money very quickly and do quite a lot of plantings in the springtime and in the fall. Groundwork Erie is going to be taking on some of that. There's going to be workshops going on throughout the summer. And so I hope to be able to report a little bit more back to you. The Department of Planning is now managing this grant. And so, yeah, it's just been a little bit of a learning curve because we need to move rather quickly in order to expend the money. Cooper, if you wanted to explain to the EAC about the tree inventory and maintenance plan, I think that's...
I had a question.
One moment, I'm going to just let Cooper finish. The part of the pot of money, we received $85,000 for planning, and I'll let Cooper explain what we're going to be embarking on here in the next couple weeks.
I can get a little closer.
Yeah.
We just received approval from DCNR for an RFP that we're going to send out for a tree inventory and sustainable urban forest maintenance plan. And we're trying to come up with a catchy acronym, but that's tough. So essentially a consultant would take a look at all of the trees throughout the city and survey all the trees. And we came up with a number of assessments and things we'd like them to look at in conversations with people at DCNR through the Western Conservancy, and then also Sarah here at the city. So they would look at things like root girdling, how old are the trees, what kind of condition are they in, and then this would really help us to inform future plantings, any removals that need to happen. The tree inventory was part of this initial grant, was scheduled to be the first part of this grant. That would then inform the plantings for the rest of the grant, but we're playing catch up with this one. So we're hoping to have that RFP out by the end of next week, I think, to get started and have the inventory completed by the end of this year, ideally.
With the possibility, if we needed it, that we can extend only that piece of the grant, we can extend for, I think, 2 more years. So that's the only part of the grant that we can extend. But this would be a huge undertaking, and it really would be great for the city because we would know every tree that we have. We would understand what's going on in terms of our canopies, our lack of canopies, and such. So, yeah, this is really... it's going to be hopefully a quick turnaround just to get the RFP up, and this is very specialized. It's a specialized, I think, not all consultants do this, so there's not that many probably that are going to be able to apply for it.
So a couple questions I have.
Yes.
So there's areas where there's significant number of Tree of Heaven, which is a host for the spider lanternfly. And there's also some concentrations of Callery Bradford pear in certain neighborhoods. And I know there's areas where there's like people have huge hedges along Green Garden and in that neighborhood of Japanese barberry. And those are things that you don't just get out easily by yourself. I haven't even mentioned the one with the, anyway, there's another one that's invasive, but these are 3, and I wondered if this inventory is going to address any of that.
Yeah, once we know where all of the species are, that kind of risk would definitely factor into it. And I'm sure there will be public engagement workshops and things for people to come in and say, like, this is where we see the Bradford pears. and that sort of thing to inform the
So
inventory.
the tree of heaven isn't always in the right-of-way. Most of the Bradford pears are on the right-of-way, and the barberry and the other one, which I can't think of at the moment, they tend to be landscaping. So those are on private property. But this is an opportunity to address those.
So to clarify, the inventory will not include backyard trees on private property, just street trees?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, right away. Is that right? Yeah. One of the other things I did want to mention that for the plantings that we will be doing over the next several months, we are making decisions through data, not just arbitrarily, going out, and we're looking at requests that have come in over the course of several years. We're looking at tree removals. We're looking at an equity map. We're looking at heat islands. We're looking at our environmental justice areas. This grant is specifically focused on areas where there has been where there's inequity. So we're making those determinations actually, hopefully by Friday, and working with Groundwork Erie because they're going to be doing about 100 tree plantings. So, and also trying to, and I don't know much about this, but how I understand it from Sarah is that it's much easier to plant, blocks of trees, block by block, because you have to deliver and you have capacity, and so we have to find areas where we have more than one tree to plant. Thank you. Yeah. So those decisions are being made within the next week of where we're going to plant, because spring is hopefully around the corner. So. Thank you. I will continue to update you. Cooper is very involved with the Urban Forest Committee, and they are a partner in this grant, and I think you should also be a partner. Not a partner, but involved in it, and we should give you updates frequently on what's going on. So,
Are tree gators by any chance part of the resources?
I think so.
Yeah, I believe they are.
Yeah. I think they're part of the planting cost.
Okay.
So
Because that would be great.
Yes, when Sarah, she initially began with this project, I believe that the tree cost involved the materials with the gators. Or at least that was one of the options that we could choose, which she has found that to be a much better way of maintaining and keeping the tree alive.
So we're not going to have a repeat of the contract where the trees were planted with the burlap still on?
I couldn't hear you, Fred.
We're not going to have a repeat of the contract where 300 trees were planted with the burlap still on and a lot of mulch around the roots, the stems?
No.
Good.
All right.
They're shutting the lights off
Yep.
on
Anything
us.
else? We got like 2 minutes, so.
That's all.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you.
Okay.